Welcome back to the Business Book Club, where we take a deep dive into the most insightful reads to help you become well-informed quickly. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. This is a book that has genuinely revolutionized how entrepreneurs and, even big established companies think about building things.
Oh, absolutely. It's much more than just another business theory. It's really a fundamental shift in mindset, would you say?
Right.
Rees basically challenges that old wisdom that, success comes from super detailed, rigid planning and then just flawless execution. Instead, he argues for, well, a truly scientific approach, one specifically designed for the extreme uncertainty that just comes with any startup environment.
Exactly. Forget that traditional playbook of spending years perfecting a product behind closed doors in stealth mode only to launch it with some grand fanfare. Rees makes a really compelling case that this very path, ironically, is often just fraught with incredible risk. When he talks about extreme uncertainty, what does that actually mean for a startup? Why does traditional planning kind of fall apart there?
Well, it means you're basically operating in uncharted territory. You often don't really know who your customer is, maybe not even what problem you're truly solving, or if your proposed solution will even work. Traditional planning. It assumes a stable environment, right?
Right.
Where you can forecast and execute. In a startup, you can't. Reese's point is that in this high-risk world, those traditional business plans, they often end up being just elaborate fictions. They give you this false sense of security, which leads you to building something nobody actually wants, just, very efficiently.
That's a powerful distinction. Wow. And to really understand why the lean startup came about, it does help to hear about Eric Ries' own story. He talks pretty candidly about a painful early failure, his first company, right after the dot-com bubble burst.
Yes, exactly. He recounts how, at the time, it really felt like they were doing everything right. They had this brilliant product idea for college students to share profiles with employers, an amazing team, cutting-edge tech, the whole nine yards. But despite all that hard work, all that perseverance, they ultimately ran out of money and failed.
Hmm.
It's a surprisingly common story, isn't it? The media loves to celebrate these, rags to riches tales, implying success is just inevitable if you have the right stuff.
That really resonates, doesn't it? Feels like we've all heard that story, the brilliant idea that just, poof, fizzled. But Rees reveals that this popular narrative often just glosses over the messy, mundane details and, crucially, the preventable mistakes.
Precisely. His experience taught him something critical. Hard work and perseverance alone, they're just not enough, especially if you end up building something that ultimately nobody wants. This is what he calls waste, the squandering of people's time, their money, their talent, and it's this tremendous, frankly, heartbreaking waste he set out to eliminate.
So, okay, with that really painful lesson learned, Rees co-founded IMVU, this virtual world and avatar company. And this time, they decided to do things, well, radically differently. What was that turning point?
Right. So instead of spending years perfecting their tech in secret, they embraced what they called a minimum viable product, an MVP. This was an early version of the product that, and Rees admits this himself, was pretty terrible, full of bugs.
Okay.
They shipped it to customers way, way before it felt ready. They even charged money for it right from the start. Then, and this is key, they changed the product constantly, sometimes dozens of times a day, all based on what they were learning from users.
That sounds completely counterintuitive,
Yeah.
almost like they were inviting failure, or at least criticism.
It does sound counterintuitive to traditional thinking, yeah. But it worked. And this approach, which kind of synthesized ideas from lean manufacturing, design thinking, customer development, agile development, that became the basis for this whole new movement, the lean startup.
You mentioned customer development. What exactly was that key influence? That sounds important.
Oh, hugely important. A critical influence was Steve Blank's customer development methodology. It essentially pushes founders to get out of the building,
Right, talk to people.
Yes. Talk directly to potential customers, understand their real problems, validate your solutions with them. This helped Rees see how vital rigorous scientific testing was for the business and marketing sides of a startup, not just, the engineering or product side. The big goal shifted. Learn how to build a sustainable business, not just build a cool product.
Okay, so it's not just about building something. It's about building the right thing and making sure it can actually survive and thrive. Rees outlines 5 core principles that form the foundation of this lean startup approach. Let's unpack the first few.
Sounds good. So the first principle is entrepreneurs are everywhere. And this really expands the traditional definition of a startup. It's not just two people in a garage anymore. It's any human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Mm.
And that concept applies just as much to, say, entrepreneurs inside large established companies. Think about the SnapTax team at Intuit. Small team, minimal budget, built a whole new product using these ideas. Internal innovation.
That's a huge shift in perspective, thinking about innovation within big players, too. And second, entrepreneurship is management. This really flips the script, doesn't it?
It really does.
It suggests entrepreneurship isn't just chaos or pure luck. It actually requires a new, specific kind of management, one designed precisely for that extreme uncertainty you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's more about steering and adapting, less about rigid, top-down planning.
Absolutely. Which leads nicely to the third principle, arguably the most vital one. Validated learning is the central purpose. Startups exist, fundamentally, to learn how to build a sustainable business. And this learning isn't just, anecdotal or based on gut feelings. It needs to be validated scientifically. Through frequent, systematic experiments that test specific hypotheses about your vision, it's actually about systematically disproving your assumptions quickly and cheaply. It sounds negative, but it's powerful. You learn what doesn't work, so you avoid building, a monument to a bad idea, exactly the kind of waste Ries was trying to stop.
Okay, so if validated learning is the core purpose, how does a startup actually do that? Like day to day, what's the practical engine driving this learning?
Yeah, good question. That brings us neatly to the fourth principle, the build, measure, learn feedback loop. This is the absolute fundamental activity of a lean startup. You take an idea, you turn it into a product, even a really basic, rudimentary one. Then you measure how customers respond, like really measure it. And from those measurements, you learn. You learn whether to pivot, which means making a significant change in strategy, or to persevere, keep going on the current path. The whole point is to accelerate this loop, go through it as fast as humanly possible.
That loop, build, measure, learn, it sounds almost deceptively simple. But how challenging is it for teams to genuinely speed that up, especially when, like you said, our instincts might be to perfect things first?
Oh, it's incredibly challenging because it requires abandoning these deeply ingrained habits we have. Our natural inclination is usually to perfect, to polish, to make sure everything is just right before we show it to the world. But Ries argues that perfection, especially in an uncertain environment, is just a form of procrastination, waste even. It takes real discipline to ship something terrible like IMVU did initially, to actively invite that immediate feedback, and to resist the urge to just keep adding features that maybe no one wants. And that's actually where the fifth principle, innovation accounting, comes into play.
Innovation accounting. Okay, that sounds like a whole new way to track progress. What does that involve?
It basically addresses how you measure progress in this inherently uncertain environment. Traditional accounting, like profit and loss, often doesn't tell the right story for an early-stage venture. So innovation accounting is focused on truly measurable progress tied to learning, setting specific, actionable milestones, and prioritizing work based on what you learn, not just on, lines of code written or features shipped.
Okay, this is fascinating. To really see these principles come alive, let's dive into some of those powerful, real-world examples. Starting with the minimum viable product, the MVP. That seems like the fastest way through the build, measure, learn loop, right?
Absolutely. It's all about speed of learning. So, think about Dropbox. Founder Drew Houston had this technically really challenging idea for seamless file sharing. Now, instead of spending ages building the whole complex system, what did he do? He created a simple, 3-minute video demonstrating how it would work.
Just a video.
Just a video. This video MVP caused their beta waiting list to explode from 5,000 people to 75,000 practically overnight. It validated massive demand before a single line of the really complex back-end code was finished.
That's brilliant. So clever. And then there's Food on the Table, that meal planning service. Their MVP was even more hands-on, right?
Yeah, the concierge MVP. The CEO literally met their first customer in person, manually created meal plans based on local grocery sales flyers, and then hand-delivered them while collecting a check for $9.95. Sounds incredibly inefficient by traditional standards, right? But it allowed them to deeply, deeply understand customer needs and validate the core service before they wrote a single line of complex code. Pure learning.
Amazing.
And another fascinating one is Aardvark, the social search engine for subjective questions, like what's a good bar near downtown? Instead of building complex AI right away for their Wizard of Oz MVP, they actually had humans answering the queries behind the scenes. The customers thought they were interacting with smart software.
Like the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. It proved the service's value, proved user engagement was there, and eventually led to a $50 million acquisition by Google, all by faking it till they could make it, essentially.
These examples really drive home that power of starting small to test big ideas. It reminds me of the Zappos story too, right? Nick Swinmurn taking pictures of shoes in local stores.
Yeah, posting them online and only buying the shoes from the store if someone actually ordered them online first. It validated the core idea people will buy shoes online before he needed to build warehouses or manage inventory. Genius.
Okay, so you run these experiments, you get feedback.
Yeah.
But how do you know if the feedback actually means anything? You mentioned metrics earlier.
Right, and this is crucial. Distinguishing actionable metrics from vanity metrics. Vanity metrics, things like total website hits, maybe total registered users.
Mm,
They might look good on a report, make you feel good.
Feel-good metrics.
Exactly. But they don't actually show real progress or clear cause and effect. Actionable metrics, though, they do. They show clear cause and effect. They should be accessible to the whole team. And importantly, they need to be auditable. You can actually verify their accuracy.
And this is where tools like cohort analysis come in,
Yeah.
right? Looking at how specific groups of customers behave over time to see if your product changes are genuinely improving things like engagement or retention.
Precisely. Are users who signed up after the change behaving differently, better than users who signed up before? That's actionable. And split testing, or A/B testing, is invaluable too. Show different versions of something, a feature, a web page to different user groups simultaneously. See which performs better against a key metric. Ries mentions Grocket, an online learning platform. They tested lazy registration, which was like an industry best practice at the time, letting users experience the site before signing up. Their A/B test showed it had zero actual impact on their key customer behaviors, so they scrapped it. Saved effort.
Wow, challenging assumptions with real data.
Exactly. And all this rigorous learning, all this data, leads you to that critical decision point. Do we pivot or persevere? A pivot isn't just a small tweak. It's a structured course correction, as Ries calls it. A fundamental change in strategy, maybe the product itself or the engine of growth, all based on that validated learning.
It must take immense courage to pivot, right? Especially when you've poured so much time, passion, maybe money into the original direction.
Oh, absolutely. It's tough. But Ries argues it's essential to avoid what he calls the land of the living dead, the awful place where companies just barely surviving, treading water, but not really growing or reaching its potential.
Zombie startup.
Kind of, yeah. He even reframes a startup's runway, how long they can survive. It shouldn't just be measured by time or money left, but by how many pivots they have left, how many more chances to find the right path based on learning.
That's a powerful way to think about it. Any examples of pivots spring to mind?
Sure. Think about Vodism. They initially started as this quite broad social network, but through learning, they pivoted to a much simpler voter contact product. That's called a zoom-in pivot, taking one feature of the original product and making it the entire product. Or Wealthfront. It actually started as an online game for amateur investors called Kaching. But they realized the game wasn't actually converting players into real asset management clients, which was their goal, so they pivoted to serve professional money managers instead. That's a classic customer segment pivot. The product stayed similar, but the target audience changed completely based on where the value and business model actually were.
It's fascinating how a shift like that, based on learning, can totally redefine a business. So pulling all these threads together, MVPs, metrics, pivots, what's the larger vision Ries is painting for how businesses should operate for, sustainable growth?
Well, he identifies three primary engines of growth. And the key thing is they're all driven by the actions of past customers, which creates sustainability, not just relying on constantly finding new ones from scratch. First, there's the sticky engine. This is all about customer retention. If your rate of acquiring new customers is consistently higher than your churn rate, the rate you lose customers, then the business grows. Simple math, but powerful focus. Keeping customers is often cheaper than finding new ones.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, the viral engine. This relies on basically person-to-person transmission. Each new customer brings in, on average, more than one additional customer. Think Hotmail back in the day, with a little signature promoting it. The product itself drives growth.
Right, the viral loop.
Exactly. And third, the paid engine. This is where you use things like advertising or sales to acquire customers. The core rule here is simple but critical. The customer's lifetime value, LTV, the total profit you expect from them over time, must exceed the cost per acquisition, CPA, what it costs you to get that customer in the first place. IMVU, Ries's own company, is a great example. They initially hoped for viral growth, but it didn't quite work, so they successfully pivoted to a paid engine, figuring out how to make that LTV-CPA equation work.
That framework really helps clarify how growth actually happens and can be sustained. And does this thinking also apply to building the organization itself, making it adaptive, able to scale without losing that learning agility?
Yes, absolutely. Building an adaptive organization is key. And some practices he highlights are really important here. One is working in small batches. This is a concept borrowed from lean manufacturing. Instead of huge, long, sequential development cycles, you break work down into much smaller pieces. This allows for way faster detection of problems and less wasted effort if you have to change course. Think about, say, folding newsletters. Is it faster to fold all of them once, then stuff all of them, then address all of them? Or to do one complete newsletter start to finish, then the next, then the next? The second way, small batches, finds errors faster. Same principle applies to software, product design, anything.
That makes perfect sense. Instant feedback almost. And the 5 whys technique, that plays a role here too, right, from Toyota.
Yes, exactly. It's a powerful root cause analysis technique. When something goes wrong, maybe a server crashes or a feature fails, you don't just fix the immediate symptom, you repeatedly ask why. 5 times, or however many it takes, to dig down to the underlying human or systemic root cause. Regis shares this great example where a server kept crashing, asking why, repeatedly led them not just to the technical glitch, but eventually to a manager who didn't believe in training new engineers properly.
Right.
So the real solution wasn't just fixing the server again, it was investing proportionally in training, addressing that systemic issue. It prevents the same problem from happening over and over.
So it's less about fail fast, fail often, and maybe more like learn fast, learn deep, and fix the root cause often.
Oh, something like that, yeah. And for large companies trying to foster this kind of innovation, Ries recommends creating an innovation sandbox. This is basically a protected space. You allow small, autonomous, cross-functional teams to experiment with new products or features, but they can only affect, say, a limited number of customers for a limited time. It gives innovators the freedom to try potentially risky things, to run those build, measure, learn loops without jeopardizing the core business. Intuit's transformation of how they developed QuickBooks is a prime example. They went from this massive annual large batch process to continuous small batch experimentation within their sandbox, running hundreds of tests per tax season now. It built a culture of entrepreneurs inside a big company.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does it fundamentally mean? The lean startup isn't just, a collection of tactics or another business buzzword. It feels like it's really a mission, right?
It absolutely is. It's a mission to eliminate what Ries calls the most tragic form of waste in our economy. And he's talking about the squandering of people's time, their passion, their skill, building things that ultimately nobody wants. It echoes Peter Drucker, who famously said, "There is surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not be done at all."
Powerful quote.
This book is fundamentally about ensuring that all that incredible effort poured into new ventures actually yields something of real value to the world.
So the actionable lesson for entrepreneurs, and really anyone involved in creating something new, seems crystal clear. It's about embracing experimentation, isn't it?
Totally.
Prioritizing that validated learning above almost everything else. Being prepared for continuous adaptation. Start with that minimum viable product, that MVP, to quickly test your core assumptions. Focus relentlessly on actionable metrics that show real progress, not just vanity numbers. Be brave enough, have the courage to pivot when the learning tells you to. And really understand which engine, sticky, viral, or paid, will actually drive your sustainable growth.
It's really about being faster, much more capital efficient, and way more responsive to what the market actually wants. It fundamentally redefines what it means to be productive, what it means to be innovative, in a world that is just inherently uncertain.
This whole deep dive, it really makes you rethink how we approach innovation at every single level. It poses that really profound question for our time. In an age where we can build almost anything technologically, the really big question is no longer, can it be built? It's, should it be built? What stands out most to you about these ideas when you think about it? We really hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the lean startup. For more insights and fascinating discussions just like this one, please be sure to subscribe to the Business Book Club wherever you get your podcasts. Now, that's a wrap for this episode of the Business Book Club. If you enjoyed the ride, make sure to subscribe so you'll never miss our next deep dive. Got a favorite business book you'd love us to explore? Let us know. We're always up for a good read. And hey, don't keep all these insights to yourself. Share this episode with a fellow book lover or your work buddy who's always looking to level up. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next episode.